being passionate about product and being a good listener got me into, sales, which I think everyone should get an experience in sales. It really helps you understand what you're offering and understand who you're offering it to.
All right, everyone, welcome back to SalesBiz. I appreciate you all taking the time. Before we kick off our episode, once again, folks, go ahead and like this, subscribe to my channel, and if you have any feedback for us and want another guest on this show, go ahead and drop some comments down below. Today, my guest comes from Texas, is a product master turned into entrepreneur. He has his own company, imaware, that screens, does health screening and monitoring for the health platform world. I'm super excited to have him share his journey today and talk about his experience. Mr. Jani Tuomi. Jani, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you taking the time, Jani. Did I pronounce that last name of yours correctly? We were just talking about this.
You got it.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, but let's kick it off. So talk a little bit about your product experience. Seems like you have quite a bit prior to becoming an entrepreneur here. I'd love to hear all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had coming out of school with a computer science degree. I learned pretty quickly that I didn't really want to be coding for the rest of my life. So I started to work with users and understand their needs. And in doing so, I kind of found that perfect gap role between talking to developers and talking to business users. And so I kind of became, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't call it product managers. So I just called myself this product, business, technology diplomat. I was just someone who told every party what they needed to get done. So that evolved into product management, and I've been around kind of the world, being able to build some pretty cool things, from telco to gas, energy, healthcare, and then recently a lot more mobile and web stuff like digital insurance, digital banking, digital wealth management, all kinds of like anti-fraud stuff, lots of big data. So yeah, all that, but never really got into healthcare. And it sort of kind of took a situation with my brother getting sick where I asked the question, why could we not have seen this forecoming, right? Why did you have to get sick to then get saved by the doctors? So I started researching into that and kind of found that most doctors test for symptoms once you have the symptom. So they kind of practice sick care, right? Once you're sick or you have a symptom, you go to them and then they fix you. And I'm like, well, why can't we practice healthcare? Let's make sure that you don't get sick. And so I wrote my first blog, and that was the first time I got onto Medium and wrote this thing called Sick Care versus Healthcare. And that really kind of prompted me to get into healthcare and actually do something about it. So I quit my awesome digital consulting job and started this company about 4 years ago.
Amazing. Sorry to hear about your brother. I hope
Hey,
it
he
all worked
recovered,
out.
and but still not lost a few years out of his quality of life. So
Yeah. Well, as long as he's okay, that's all that matters. And it seems like this became a passion project for you, not just something that produces revenue. Was it always about? You mentioned you had some coding experience starting off. What again pivoted you towards the product side? Was it more of you like the design aspect of it, actually the user experience side versus just punching in codes and digits?
well, I my first day on the job was actually 9/11, and just to
Wow.
date myself a bit, and that was tough. A lot of technology jobs and all that sort of just blew up around that time frame.
Right.
Unfortunately, and then a lot of overseas, kind of offshoring of technology roles and things like that. So, kind of as an onshore guy with development skills, you either had to, figure out very quickly what you're going to do. So, I found like I could take my development skills and translate that into business needs and interpret what they wanted. And then I actually found joy in that, like being able to give a business user something they wanted, and they'd be like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. Why can't you just like code that for me?" And yeah, that's where it all began. And the more I help business users and people get what they wanted, the more I got rewarding, kind of experiences out of it. And then it just kept kind of growing from there year over year.
Yeah. Absolutely. So from coding
Yeah.
to product and now business, obviously those are all different worlds, but tell me a little bit about what sparked you on the business side of the field. It's great to, from a product standpoint, to deliver, but what were some of your exciting points on the business side that you were delivering?
Yeah, so I think I think anyone actually, if they're a good listener and have some passion for whatever it is that they do, can actually be pretty good in sales. I honestly believe that. And so when I started building product, I transitioned into consulting, so digital product consulting. And the best way that I took those skills to work was to listen to these companies that were struggling to move from paper-based processes to digital, or they were losing customers to these cool SaaS platforms, or digital startups, big major banks that were like, hey, how do we compete against that little fintech startup? So just jumping into some of the biggest companies in the nation and just listening. And then being able to translate that into product designs, lots of prototyping. I did a ton of prototyping, and just be like, hey, what if we imagined this world? What if we busted down that thing that you do today and replaced it with something that looked like this? And really just listening to what they were saying and kind of playing it back to them, that
Right.
that kind of consultative sales process. So that got me into kind of biz dev for the consulting company that I was working at. And by being able to just help these companies succeed, actually became one of their biggest sales guys. Not a sales guy at all, actually, at the time, but being passionate about product and being a good listener got me into sales, which I think everyone should get an experience in sales. It really helps you understand what you're offering and understand who you're offering it to. I actually think it makes you a better product manager, if you know actually how to sell your product and people are buying it.
Absolutely. I can't stress this enough, and I've mentioned this on this podcast many times across numerous guests. We're all in sales, whether we
Yeah.
sold our partner to be our partner for life, or sold our the company that we work for to become an employee. Whatever it is that we're doing this in this world, we're always selling something. So couldn't agree with you more on that one, Yanni. So from coding to product to business and then to healthcare. I mean, talk about just continuing to climb in the hardest realms ever. You're dealing with compliances, regulatories, HIPAA, you name it. We know that what inspired you to get into it, but what inspired you to stay passionate about it outside of your family not feeling so well at the time?
Well, I hear you on that. Regulatory burdens, state, federal, lab, FDA, all of that is enough to sometimes really, challenge your passion on it. But those gates and controls and systems are there to protect the patient. So you pretty quickly learn, what the spirit of them is, and if you're honest to your product, it actually doesn't really bother you too much.
Yeah.
They're really there to protect patients. So with that mindset, it's really easy to wake up every morning when you get handwritten letters. Especially during COVID, we've been helping everybody from 18-year-olds to a 95-year-old. And she gave me a call and said, if you're ever back in Houston again, come on and I'll cook you dinner. Like, to hear that, was just like, I can get up for that every morning and do our part to help people stay healthy. So yeah, we've had all kinds of crazy stories like that, and we continue to get them. And people write our team. We get handwritten letters, which I just didn't even think exist in this day and age, but people take the time out to put pen to paper. So that's the motivation. And helping other families not have to go through what I did, just makes it something that not just myself but our whole team is pretty pumped up to get out and work on every day.
Yeah. Can't beat that Southern hospitality, my friend.
Yeah.
Cook, come on in my home. I'll cook you dinner, introduce you to my family, etc. No,
Yeah.
it resonates well, and I respect it definitely. It sounds like a challenge. I mean, you seems like you played in all realms of the world, but that's what a true entrepreneur does: is has a little bit of experience and everything within that one great thing that they're good at. So I'm glad you brought it up, Yanni. COVID. This is one of the reasons why I was passionate about meeting you, is because it seems like you have the platform that everyone should be using right now to see, is this something that could potentially be of risk to me? Talk to me a little. Let's talk a little bit about imaware and how specifically this is helping our current crazy pandemic that we're in right now.
Yeah. So it was about a year ago. It's crazy how time flies. I don't know if that feels like a blur or a decade ago to you, but
Starting to, yeah, especially sitting
yeah.
at home all day. Absolutely.
Yeah, every day, right? It was a year ago when we started to see those first cases in the US. And so there kind of became a question in my mind. I'm like, hey, we got this platform, we can do testing, we got doctors, we got nurses. If there's sort of this tipping point where COVID starts to really expand and it's kind of running out of control, we're gonna have to do something. Like I felt like we're gonna have to step up and do something. We just can't turn a blind eye to it. So January, the cases were kind of okay, and then February started to accelerate. And so we made the decision to stop all non-COVID marketing, and we went all in on COVID. We put our tech teams to work. We onboarded labs. We got more doctors, more nurses, and then we partnered up with City of Houston and City of Austin and the energy sector across Texas, really, and said that we can help your vulnerable elderly, your individuals who can't get tested in public spaces, and for the energy sector, we can ensure that your essential workforce can keep the lights on, the power flowing, so that homes and people can be safe. So we went after a segment of people nobody were really testing. So the essential workforce and energy, and then kind of helping the cities get after people who couldn't go to public testing sites. And that just it took off from there in March. And just again doing our part, we were slammed right off the bat. And obviously we saw what COVID did, and the cases kept going up, and especially in the early days, we were fighting just to get nasal swab, tests, and there was just so few of them out there, and we were getting calls all the time of people who were incredibly sick, especially those early symptomatic people were really, really sick. And so, yeah, we'd be fighting with other vendors and providers to be like, hey, can you give me 10 today? And, I'll get you back 20 tomorrow, and just like kind of stuff like that. But what was really cool is everybody worked really, really well together. It was surprising to see competitors, work with us, and we just like made stuff happen. I've never seen the spirit of entrepreneurism and kind of like do good intersect so well as those early days, just because everybody had limited everything. There were some bad actors out there charging like $50 for a glove and $100 for a PPE and $12 for a mask, or $20 for a mask, even $35 for a mask. At first it was crazy, but pretty much everyone was wanting to make this work. And
outside
so
of there's price gouging out there that was happening. And yeah, I completely agree with you. But the majority of what you said, I truly resonate with, is the fact that a crazy pandemic was unifying all of us now at this point.
Yeah.
Competitors, when something is no longer about the money or not for the most people, it just became about quality of life. So absolutely couldn't agree with you more. Sorry, you were saying something else about.
Yeah, like and then just we started to get a name for ourselves across Texas, and next thing you know, we're testing in like we're getting requests to test 1,000 people here and there at a GPS lat long location, right? It's like you have to take a 4x4, then jump on an ATV, and so we would make that happen. We'd courier in private planes to be able to get those samples on dry ice back to the lab. Like you name it, we were doing it to make it happen. To ensure that those utilities, those solar sites, the windmills, the kind of the pump stations and these engineers could just keep stuff moving. It was actually pretty crazy. And then we even did a project in Florida, and there was a hurricane that hit through, and it knocked out like lights in 80,000 homes. So we had to do some COVID testing at like 11 p.m. and then hold off people until they were cleared negative, and then they could go put power back on in people's homes. Like, it was pretty crazy back then. It just felt like just a totally different world in that first kind of like April, May, June timeframe. And then, then we started to get scale, doing testing across the nation, thousands and thousands and thousands of tests a day kind of thing. And again, it just sort of grew organically, and customers were coming to us and just saying, hey, can you help me with this or that or this or that? And we always kept saying yes. And, and growing and, growing our team 4x this year.
Wow,
it's pretty
congrats.
cool, right? Like everything was just sort of growing, as fast as we could keep growing onto it. So, but again, it was I just took the approach of how can we help you, right? Every different company, every different size came to us, and we were always just like, how can we help you? So,
yeah. So let's walk through an example process. Let's say if I was to be a customer, what would I experience, Yanni, from start to finish, just so our users are aware and hopefully use you after they listen to this podcast?
Yeah. Well, why don't we think about a non-COVID test,
Okay.
and think about that and see if this resonates for people. Before COVID, we were really focused on heart diseases, and a stat that most people don't know is 50% of people who have heart attacks have normal cholesterol. So you start to think, wait a minute, am I that person in that 50%, or especially if I have normal cholesterol? So, we like to start with a bit of education. Do you have family history? Are you smoking? Are you, eating horribly? Are you exercising or not? And we kind of put you into this bit of a risk bucket. So imagine that, you look back in your family history and you found out that maybe your grandfather had a sudden heart attack. Well, sudden heart attack starts to sound like potentially, he was in that other hidden risk bucket. And so hidden risk bucket often sounds like genetic type of bucket, right? So let's just make sure, and we'll put a test in front of you that looks at certain genetic based markers. So big mouthfuls of words like lipoprotein A and haptoglobin. Most people don't know these tests. You just hear good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, right? So that's where we focus on, is being able to get people these preventative tests so they can avoid this very chronic condition in the first place, right? So you buy this test. A telemedicine doctor gets engaged with you to make sure that you know that you're getting this test. It's right for you, and then you get this kit that's really easy to use. You drop just 3 to 5 drops of blood. It goes back to our certified lab, and you get a result that then you can read yourself, and then have again that telemedicine doctor guide you through next steps. So it's pretty easy, and all of that happens, kind of end to end from order to result in about 7 days, and you can do it all at home. So most people, don't have to then go to their doctor, go home, fast, go wait at the lab, sit in a chair, especially during COVID, hang out with other people who might have COVID. We've seen a real boon in kind of the non-COVID testing for preventable conditions like diabetes and heart disease. And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
if you take our test and you learn that you have a bit of this risk, you can get in front of it. You can make some minor diet and lifestyle changes. You can talk to your doctor, and you could eventually avoid getting a type 2 diabetes or heart disease, right? If you take those right prevention controls so much earlier in life.
Absolutely. So heart disease sounds like diabetes is an option. Are there any other types of options in terms of figuring out like high blood pressure or anything along those lines?
Yeah, we have 18 tests. They range even into some autoimmune conditions like celiac disease. So celiac
Oh,
disease is for people who have a gluten intolerance, and in essence, their body really rejects when they consume gluten, and their immune responses can be very drastic, and they can lose weight, and they can have horrible symptoms. Rheumatoid arthritis is really debilitating, where your joints kind of like actually your body's fighting itself, and your joints seize up, and you see
starts
some
going
like
on. Yeah.
it's really tough, and it can be debilitating to your back, neck, knees, fingers. So yeah, a lot of like conditions like that: autoimmune, cardiovascular, uh, diabetes, and for men we've also got prostate cancer and testosterone, and for women we've got thyroid function. So
I was
yeah,
just
good.
about to ask about cancer because, I read a stat. Unfortunately, I found out when someone close to me recently was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and I started reading a lot more about it again. Noticed that 1 out of 2 men are in this lifetime are going to be diagnosed with cancer. I was blown away by those stats. So you mentioned prostate cancer. Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about that, what that test is like. But what other are you experimenting with other types of cancers to track or early detection, anything along those lines?
Yeah, cancer's I mean that was, something that my brother had gone through. So it's a,
Sorry to hear
personal
that.
story, but it's yeah, thanks. It's a scary word, and it's hard to preventatively test for. So, we've got really good tests around heart disease and hidden risks and things like that, but we're still, kind of as a scientific community zeroing in on some of these cancer prevention markers. So often, that hasn't really made its way into what I'd call prevention screening. You do have some very good tests around colon cancer, prostate cancer, but I think what we're really looking for is that prevention marker that could identify maybe just cancerous type activity in your body,
Right.
so that it might be a little more of a broad spectrum marker. But all that aside, we were really excited as I got this company going to be supported by the doctor that debunked Theranos, and so Dr. Diamandis had dedicated his life to like uh, finding information in a couple drops of blood, and he's also the guy who actually discovered the PSA biomarker, which is often used as a screening test for prostate cancer. So, we get to work with some amazing doctors and scientists on identifying, from your blood, these markers around cancers. And I'm really hopeful that in the next couple of years, there'll be some really, really good screening tests that are very preventative in nature and identifying cancers.
Absolutely. One thing I was actually reading on and kind of took me into this vortex of my research was children cancer. Unfortunately, what I found during my research is that I don't know why I started reading into it because of, recent events, but what I found out was that there's still no explanation as to why kids are getting cancer. Are you seeing some of that yourself as a leader of your organization? And is there anything that's currently applicable to children with respect to your test, or is it just for adults?
I'll work backwards on that one. The easy answer is we're 18 and up because of consent laws.
I would imagine.
I think we can work a little bit to get that potentially down to 16 and state by state, and to have some disclaimers and kind of get that consent from the parent. And we'll probably get there, as the internet and digital health sort of converge to allow consent to be captured, and things like that. But the cancer in youth, like, kids at 2 years old getting cancers, it's I don't think we have a very good explanation for some of this. Especially you can see in families, one of the children does not get a cancer in their entire life, and a different sibling has it right from birth, and might struggle with that and throughout the rest of their life. So it's I think there's a lot of different good hypotheses out there, but I just don't think we've cracked that one yet, universally. And especially, you could imagine a world, wouldn't it be amazing if we could start to screen mom and dad, in that year before maybe, and see if there's something. Is it genetic that causes it? Is it a little bit of environmental at the same time? I mean, I think we're on the tip of the iceberg. Like I would say to my teammates, like, in science right now around healthcare, we think the world is flat. There's so much we don't know about our bodies. We've mapped the genome, but we do not know all of the biomarkers. We don't know how all of this interacts. We don't know what causes certain genetic epigenetics to enable because of the society around us. Does what you eat actually cause cancer? We've seen certain very real statements around that, and then in other times it doesn't pan out. So I think we're really in the stone age of where we are, but that's what makes it exciting to be in healthcare. Is I think in the next 5, 10, and 15 years, you'll just start to see like crazy Star Trek kind of science. I think we're getting closer to the device that can scan you, and things like that. So that's what makes it super exciting to get up every morning. It's just be like, we're in this kind of like, we work with patients and we're really getting into some pretty cool technologies.
Yeah. It makes me think, is there at any point in time where our cell phones are going to become like little handheld MRIs that we just scan our babies or scan ourselves at any point in time to see if anything's happening, and then at that point start taking care of it? But what does that technology going to bring in this world? What kind of radiation? What kind of
I'll bet you can bank on it. Honestly, when you think of Apple Watch, what they're doing, there's so much out there.
I get freaked out wearing this thing, to be honest, Jani. I always think about that. It's like, I know the information I'm getting, but what information's leaking out there about me right now? And I'm telling you one thing, I've been seeing a lot more ads about life insurance. And do you want to take there's this new Forward. I keep seeing Forward every other ad going on. So I don't know. Ever since I put this thing on, it feels like I'm getting a lot more ads than I normally would about health, as opposed to my other passions, like about business or SaaS or technology or anything along those lines. So it's interesting where technology is going in that direction, but it seems like you're playing in that space yourself.
Yeah, I think let me help you sleep a little better at night. What I think you're seeing is advertisers are, picking up on the fact that you own the watch, and maybe, your cookies are indicating that. They're not reading your data. I'm
Uh,
pretty convinced that there's no way Apple's selling your data, even in some third party transfer way that they've snuck in. So basically they just say, hey, if you bought that Apple Watch, you're probably worried about your health, so let us push some more healthcare on you. Um, that's why I'm glad there's things like HIPAA, as outdated as it is. It sort of keeps a lot of people honest to say, hey, I'm going to not sell your health data. I'm not going to just give it away.
yeah.
I'm going to be pretty cautious about it. So, but imagine that, one thing we were just joking about is, imagine the future. Like today, you sell your usage data on the internet, like Facebook. You go on there and you kind of show your likes and your friends and all that, and you give that all away, and you're the product. Imagine, you could do a search in the future on your own health data, and in essence, you're giving it away for free, but you get free healthcare in return. So you get all your biomarker data, all your genetic data gets given to Google Health or whatever, but in return you get a
Whoa.
free service of free monitoring, or free vitamins or things like that. So you are the product. Healthcare delivery like that could be pretty amazing if we commercialize it. But like I said, there's so many crazy things to come in the next decade.
You're either going to be a trillionaire with that idea or you're going to be hung out to dry. I'm going to stand back and watch what
What?
happens.
Yeah, not that I'm going to do it per se, but I mean, I'm pretty sure someone's going to do it. And you know, the other thing too that's pretty cool is, imagine you go on Amazon Health or something like that, and it's like, people who are like you, 5 years later got prostate cancer, so let's get in front of that. And they just know enough
Yeah.
about you to say like, hey, I think just based on who you are, you look like a bunch of other people who ended up getting sick. So let's get in front of that. So recommended healthcare, people like you bought this healthcare. Like, it's crazy if you think of Amazon and Google and apply it to the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm a Costco guy, I'll be honest. I have Amazon Prime, but I love Costco. I've been a
Yeah. Eh?
member for
Wow.
years, whether it's pharmacy or tires or food, technology, etc. Like I could buy a
They
laptop
do
over
have good
there.
deals on tires. I'll give you that.
Tires, laptop. I mean, I got my Mac a little cheaper, and I could return it after 90 days without paying any restocking fees, as opposed to going to the Apple store or something else and getting hit that way. But no, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, my opinion is all about streamlining. I don't know if I want to body hack myself just yet and have my data be out there, but it is definitely a sound idea if it's from a preventative standpoint. I know that it's in the hands and eyes of the right people. I honestly don't think I would mind. We have life is too short. We only have one life to live, so why not try to make the best of it and try to do the best for yourself and your family.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's if the data is only good if it's actionable, right? So if you know that you've got this marker or potentially this condition that might happen in 5 years, the question you're asking is like, so what? Or now what? So if it's just like, hey, you can't do anything about it, you just got to wait. I mean, do you want that cloud hanging over your head? Probably not. But if it was like, what if I told you you could take, vitamin E or omega-3 or vitamin D, and you could just lower your risk and you'd never even have that problem? Well, then you'd probably do that, right? So
I try to stock up on vitamins, man, but it's one of those things. I don't even know why I'm taking them. It's just if it's recommended, I'll try it basically.
yeah.
But so tell me, with respect to I'm aware, where are you trying to grow the company? It seems like the growth has been exponential. The attraction from the market's been there, but what's your next step? We have a vaccine coming, so COVID may or may not slow down. Are you thinking about maybe vaccine repercussions, or are you diving into any other territories with respect to healthcare? Talk us a little bit about where you're taking the company.
Yeah. We only got into COVID because we felt like we had to do our part there. 3 years ago, we were never thinking COVID. So I still think heart disease and diabetes are those conditions that actually affect and kill more people than COVID has, unfortunately. And I hate to look at it that way, but when COVID does get, kind of, when it goes away and the vaccines are working and everyone's immune in the future, we still are going to have diabetes and heart disease running rampant and affecting a lot of people. So we're continuing to kind of double down and triple down on investments in those tests, growing those markets, adding new tests, bringing doctors in that are prevention experts from Johns Hopkins and others. So we're really doing a lot of work there, and we're going to come out with some pretty kind of what I would say amazing and groundbreaking tests in the next couple months that are just going to help you get in front of this stuff really early on. So we're going to do a lot there. But with COVID, we've done some tests, to see people who were previously infected and how long their immune system and their antibodies linger around. For some people, they were disappearing in as fast as 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
And so that makes me think that these vaccines, might have to be continually delivered, maybe every 6 months, maybe every 9 months, 12 months, who knows, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of questions around, what is my vaccine level? What is my IgG biomarker level so that I can see if I'm actually immune, right? So we might actually add one more COVID test to our menu around kind of testing for vaccine effectiveness. So I'm thinking about that, and that could be good for the next few years to just have and make it affordable for people to just check in. And if they don't have the right levels, they can go to their doctor and maybe get a booster shot or something like that. So I think we're going to see, the real life data on the vaccines and how long they last, and it'll kind of help us understand if we should build a test for that or not.
If you do, you just got a customer right now. And let me explain why. I'm
Yeah.
all for vaccinations. However, I don't get flu shots. And because every time I do, I get horribly sick. And it happened twice already. One time I was nearly hospitalized because of such a bad fever.
Oh,
I
wow.
just
Yeah.
I just don't do them. And I'm not the first of my kind. I've heard that a couple of times already out in the world. So, not that I'm against the vaccine, I am just a little hesitant about something so new, so fast approved, and that's being enforced. So, I'd actually be interested to learning more about how this is applying to the market and how I could, how this will impact my health over the thing. I feel like you're onto something there because I'm not the only one that's a little nervous about it. I know there's a lot of people out there that see the value, but at the same time let me wait a little bit longer before I put this into my body. Are you seeing any of that in the market as well?
Oh, it's all over the place. Like we've got doctors who are saying, that they got it, and they were tested and they didn't have any antibodies. It means they're just their innate immune system fought it off. We've seen other people who had it severely and generated large counts of antibody response. I just don't think I think the data is everywhere because COVID is actually affects us all a little differently. Some people can fight it off and are asymptomatic, and other people are long haulers and they have 60, 70, 80 days of, kind of PCR positives and active antibody response going on. So I
Right.
don't know that, of course, the vaccine was sort of meant to hit the 80% of people. But we're going to learn probably that maybe dosage has to change for some people or they got to be boosted. Um, I think the vaccine's great. It's a very high quality vaccine. It was built with global data sets and really kind of the most cutting edge approach to vaccine development. So it's not fair to say oh, back in the 1960s, it used to take 10 years to make a vaccine and now they did it in a year. Well, yeah, we're in 2020, right? So I think the vaccine is excellent. I'm glad to see leaders stepping up and doing it. Like you saw the presidents of the past take it. It's a high quality vaccine, but I think we're going to learn more about dosage and some of that stuff, and it'll get a little more fine tuned and personalized in the next year or so. So that's probably my stance on it. But yeah, it's unbelievable just the amount of debate we have on it, and people who you'd think should know better are anti-vaccine, and people who have no idea are like, yes, I'm getting vaccine. There's been a lot of kind of just information and misinformation, and I'm really hopeful that the more people who take it, you'll start to see that, hey, the data is looking good, people are not getting COVID and it's working. And I think that proof's in the pudding on that. And the more we
Yeah.
see it working, the more confidence we'll have in it, and it'll kind of snowball out of control in a good way, right?
Absolutely. Let's talk a little about
Yeah.
you as a leader, Yanni. We're living in a crazy time once again, and leadership, working from home, that all is kind of pivoting on its own. How have you been evolving as a leader with everything that's been going on, and how are you managing your team accordingly in this work from home environment?
Yeah, and growing it too, right? So the coolest skill I learned is Zoom interviews. I used to interview people face to face, and you'd read body language and how you shook your hand, how you kind of just interacted. You can't read that as well in a Zoom interview, right? So I've learned to really just trust my gut on people. And yeah, we've hired just so many people, and everyone's ended up being just such an awesome culture fit. So yeah, I think, I've learned to really rely on my instincts a little more, and not so much follow a script. It's like before, hiring had to be very prescriptive, like, did they answer this? Did they answer that? Now I'm just like, do I like you as a person, and can I see myself working with you? A little more, kind of gut instinct there. Um, but as a leader, again, when you're growing that fast, at the end of the day, you're hiring these people because you want them to be better than you are in the thing that you're bringing them on board for. And
Right.
so that means you got to trust them. I'm probably, everyone will say, one of the most hands-off managers. And I just, really let you come to me. I've learned, I think that term, like, servant leader, or however you describe it, just I'm I'm there for you guys and gals. So that's the way it's become. And really my team, tells me what to do. And I just love it that way, because I'm just getting out of their way and letting them succeed. And then I, get rid of the roadblocks for them when they run into roadblocks, whether it's, escalations or budget or whatever it happens to be. Then that's where I step in. So
Yep. The Steve Jobs approach. I hire smart people, so they tell me what to do. Well
it
played.
honestly, like it, and you know what? I might have thought differently, when I was younger, and I'm like, oh, when you're younger, you got to be being the leader means, you got to be the smartest one in the room, and you got to know everything. No, not at all. I think, once you eventually get a bit of experience and you have awesome people you can trust, I love to step back and just be like, you do you, and you're kicking ass, and you tell me what you need from me, right? So
Yeah. No, no question. I
yeah,
love that. I mean, micromanagement, I've been under micromanagers before, and I've been with leaders that put the trust in you to deliver, as long as we have some action items, some follow-up meetings to make sure we're all in alignment. That's all you really need, right? Let the
yeah,
person be themselves, let the personality drive, and then you're there to assist from a morale standpoint,
yeah,
or whatever is in their way. You're just their help, as opposed
yeah.
to, it's ironic, right? You're the leader, but you are their help while they're taking care of your customers, your product, and your goals. So I
You
love
got it. I
love
think,
that.
like you said, I think the best that happened in my 20s was I actually didn't learn how to be a great manager. I learned how not to manage by having one of the most micromanaging managers ever. And I'm like, if I grow up and become a manager, I'm not going to be like that. And so I was kind of glad to have a bit of that experience.
You took the
I think
words right out of my mouth. Literally,
yeah,
I had a boss that played my calls for me. He was actually on this podcast. I'm not going to talk about who he is, but he did teach me a lot about diligence and about fine tuning and saying yes versus yeah on calls. Like, I think it's great experience for someone coming out of college, to be honest, because it's kind of like boot camp for the Marines or something like that.
yeah,
But ultimately, what you just said absolutely resonates. Is you learn, do I want to be that type of manager, or do I think I could be something better, something more? And that's the evolution that because it works well for him. His business is thriving.
that's awesome.
But
Yeah.
I didn't, clearly I didn't resonate with that. So, but I feel like it is also a good experience as well to be micromanaged, to make sure you see both sides of the field.
100%. No, all experiences are good experiences, right? It's up to
Absolutely.
you to take from it. I got to tell you one thing, total offshoot thing here, but one of the coolest things I did to become a better leader too is Second City improv. Um, for anybody out there who's just like, hey, I struggle in certain moments, maybe I don't like to be caught off guard. I always have to be over prepared. Improv is a way to just knock that out of you and, get you comfortable with the uncomfortable. Honestly, I swear by it. And yeah, I did improv for a bunch, like a while, and it really just helps you become, really go with the flow. If something turns on you sideways, you know, they teach you to say yes ands, and they teach you to kind of take the narrative and run with it. And I think in sales, when you're listening a lot and then maybe you get under certain kinds of pressures, being able to kind of move the conversation away where you're owning that narrative, is important. So last question, the way you said, what did I learn about leadership, is those improv classes actually paid off.
That sounds like a lot of fun, man. I think
Yeah.
we had something like that in high school, and that was 20 plus years ago. But some
Yeah.
people came in, and that exercise really bonded everyone. It was a great time. Everyone was laughing their tails off. But I never heard of that as an advice for the business world. I think that's ingenious. Definitely have to try that. Yeah, your time is precious. So one last question for you. This is one of my favorite questions for all entrepreneurs, and clearly you've had a heck of a ride. So I'm excited to see what you have to say. If Mr. Jani were to go back into the time machine, jump into that DeLorean, and go back to visit his 18-year-old self, if you were to give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would you tell Mr. Younger Jani?
Uh, I would say take more risks. Spread your wings even wider. Don't worry that don't have your perfect career mapped out at 25. In fact, go out and try a whole bunch more things. Take that Euro backpack trip, try a stint in sales and fail. Because you know what? There's no way you have to worry about your, 401k and your kids and house and everything at 25 and 30. So at 18, just start thinking about all the things you want to do and go knock them out in the next decade.
Love it.
I was a little too prescriptive and was told, go get that job and, start earning that income. And, I'm glad I did. But, we're fortunate in this day and age to have so much opportunity and opportunities to reinvent ourselves. So, start that mindset earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just go work, go do something, go get out,
do something, right?
Go do
Yeah.
something. Whether it makes money, doesn't make money, if it puts a smile on your face, just do it. And then eventually you'll find your path. But that's my advice. I always thought to myself is don't listen to anybody. Just do what you feel is right. Your gut instinct, have some mentors and stuff. But I couldn't agree with you more, man. Just do something, keep trying, and you'll eventually find your way.
The hardest step is always the first step, right? It's just like once you take the first step, it only gets easier from there. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's awesome.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, but clearly you're doing amazing things in this market. Thank you for advocating, not just in the health world, but for humans out there that are clearly struggling. And you've actually had your own struggles that pivoted you into that direction. So I'm blown away by all the success you've had. Continue crushing it out there, my friend, and please stay in touch.
Thanks a lot. We will do. I'll be chatting with you soon.
Appreciate it, Jani. Take care.